Hello everyone, welcome back to another one of our videos going out as part of Tick Bite Prevention Week. My name is Sam Langford, I'm the Public Engagement Project Manager for the What Makes Viruses Tick project, based out of the Brennan Lab at the MRC University of Glasgow Centre for Virus Research. I don't know what order we'll have been in today, but you may already have met some of the people and partners that are involved in the What Makes Viruses Tick project, and we're here to speak to another couple of really awesome people about the work that they do. Also looking at tick ecology. So I'm going to very quickly get them into the room. So say hello to Lucy, to Roman, and to Caroline. Hello, folks. How are you doing?
Hi.
Hi,
Sam. Thanks for having us.
No, thank you all so much for being here. Could we go around very quickly, and I'm just going to come and ask, who are you and what do you do? And I'm going to start with Lucy.
Oh, hi, my name's Lucy Gilbert, and I'm an animal ecologist at the University of Glasgow. So I study animals and why they live, where they live. And one of my specializations is ticks and tick-borne diseases and the hosts associated with ticks, such as deer and birds and rodents.
Fab. And then we'll come round to Roman.
Yes, hello, Roman Biek. I'm a researcher also based at the same institute as Lucy. Also an animal ecologist by training. I study diseases and pathogens and how they spread and are maintained in natural populations using genetic and other tools, field methods. And Lyme disease and tick-borne diseases is one of my main interests.
Fabulous, thank you. And last but by no very means not least, Caroline.
my name is Caroline Millins. I'm based at the University of Liverpool. My training is, I'm a vet originally, and my research has been primarily focused on tick-borne diseases and ecology of ticks and Lyme disease in Scotland. And Roman and Lucy were actually my supervisors for my PhD when I was at Glasgow.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you, folks, for your introductions. We're going to hear more from each of you over the next 10 or so minutes. But Lucy, I think I'm going to come to you first and ask, we're all very interested in ticks here as part of the work you do and as part of the work that we're doing at the Centre for Virus Research. But could you tell us a little bit more about ticks and tick biology that you are looking at in terms of disease spread?
Yeah, well, there's actually quite a lot of different species of ticks that we have in the UK and Scotland. But the one that is the most important for causing disease in humans, such as Lyme disease, is a particular species of tick called the sheep tick, or the deer tick called Ixodes ricinus. So that's the one that we're really mainly focusing on. And the reason why it's interesting is because it's a type of tick that feeds on basically every animal out there. So your dog, your cat, your sheep, horses, and occasionally it will bite human as well and maybe transfer a pathogen if it's carrying one. So it's Ixodes ricinus is the one we're really interested in. And the important thing to know if you're out walking in the woods and you get bitten by a tick is you really need to know what stage of its life cycle it was that bit you, because it's got 3 active life stages. When it first hatches out, it's this tiny little, literally like a millimetre or less big, it's tiny little sort of beige brown coloured thing. Sometimes you get hundreds of them on your trousers if you're walking through a wood in spring. And because they've only just hatched, they're probably harmless with respect to Lyme disease because they haven't actually fed on an animal yet to get the bacteria from the animal. Then the following year, it'll emerge as what we call a nymph, and it's maybe 2 millimetres long, and they're black or dark grey. And those are the ones that are responsible for most cases of Lyme disease in humans. The reason is because they've already fed on a rodent or a bird or something like that and acquired, a small proportion of them might have acquired the bacteria. So that's why you really need to know what stage of tick it was that bites you. If it's a nymph, this sort of medium-sized one, then really keep an eye on that. And then the following year, after another feed, it will emerge as an adult, and they're really quite big. These big red, horrible ticks that walk quite fast over you. And when they've had a feed on your dog or cat, you'll notice they've expanded to a big grey, horrible thing, a bit like a grape. They might give you Lyme disease as well. But because they're so big, you generally notice them and flick them off. And also because they're a year older, they've had much higher chance of dying. So they're like 10 times rarer than nymphs. So just bear in mind what stage of tick it is that you're seeing, so that you can sort of assess the risk.
And like finding out those life stages is something that we've been trying to showcase over this week. So hopefully you might have seen some of the resources we've got on, folks, if you're watching at home, to show the different life stages of a tick and how to identify them. And we'll have some images going out as part of this video as well, so you can see those different life stages. In terms of like passing on pathogens or disease, how does that work, or how do we believe it works? Roman, I'm going to come to you to discuss that one.
Yeah, so Lucy already mentioned the different life stages, and so at each life stage, the tick needs to take a blood meal from a warm-blooded host. So that's a mammal or bird generally, well, when they first take the first blood meal, as Lucy was saying, that's when they might acquire a pathogen that they can then transmit at the next life stage when they take the next blood meal. So we do know that small mammals and birds in particular are important as those animals that they pick up the Lyme disease pathogen from. And we also know that the adults, they tend to feed on other types of animals. They tend to go for the large-bodied animals like your dog, but also we know that deer and livestock, for example, are important hosts for those adult ticks. So those animals don't transmit the pathogens, but they're really important for the female to get that blood meal that allows her to grow big and produce lots of eggs, and then sort of produce her offspring. So we look at different animal species in terms of having different roles to play in tick-borne disease cycles. There are some species that are really important for maintaining the tick populations, and there are others that are really important for maintaining the pathogen that these ticks can transmit.
Yeah, I'd always, like, before working on this project, I'd always heard of if there's more deer, then there's more likely to be Lyme's disease in an area. But it seems as like that's just like something I've heard through word of mouth. But it seems that doesn't seem to be the case, right? It's more about or is it?
Yeah, it's definitely a bit more complicated than that. I mean, it's true that deer are oftentimes really important hosts, and oftentimes we do find that relationship where there's lots of deer, you tend to find lots of ticks. But there's also other species. I mentioned livestock. Sometimes you can have tick populations that are maintained without the influence of deer. So we have seen some examples of that. And then, as I said, you need the other species there as well in order for the pathogen to come into play. So if you only had deer, you wouldn't need to worry because deer don't transmit the Lyme disease pathogen. So it's the other species that the earlier life stages of the tick feed on that are really important for that.
Okay, definitely. Well, that's definitely something that I'm learning more and more about as like time goes on. So it's really good to have those sorts of things clarified. Thank you so much for that. But we are seeing like well, I know that even from my time spent walking on the hillside and hills in the countryside, picking up more ticks along the way, and inevitably, I guess, we'll find more people being affected by ticks and potentially the pathogens that they spread. So how are people working with communities to understand the risk of tick-borne pathogens? Is that something that is going on at the moment in the work that you do? Caroline, I might come to you for that one.
Yeah, so we're really keen that our research links up with affected communities and stakeholders, and provides impact in that way. So the way in which our research can kind of feed into that is by contributing towards risk maps that might give information on how risk varies between different areas, and also giving stakeholders information on how they might be able to introduce changes to how in terms of land management and kind of managing habitats and areas where we know there's ticks and hosts. Yeah, so I was going to go on and say about how we find out about variation in risk between different areas. And that's something I worked on in my PhD studies with Roman and Lucy, but we also sort of carry out lots of different surveys. And that information can be really useful to affected communities and people in terms of informing them about how many ticks are infected in a particular area. And from many such studies where we've collected thousands and thousands of ticks, I think in my PhD it was well over 10,000 that we went out and collected. We use a blanket dragging technique. We collect ticks over 10-meter transects, pick them all up and take them back to the lab to test them. We know that on average, the infection rate in ticks is around 2 to 6%. So that means if you're out in areas that could be risky, like woodlands, also some open areas, grassland and moorland, something in the order of 1 in 20 or 1 in 50 ticks could be infected with the bacteria that causes Lyme disease. So although you obviously need to be aware, and if you're in those habitats, and check yourself carefully, it's good to keep in mind that the risk, although it's there, is fairly low. And if we compare that mean or average level to other areas in Europe, we're at the kind of lower end. So it's good to keep that in mind. So to kind of balance off kind of concerns with not wanting to put people off going out and exercising in woodlands and open areas and getting the health benefits from that.
No, absolutely. That's a really important point to make, because I know that there are lots of concerns about the risks when you're out in the countryside, but seeing, like you saying those numbers there, even just makes me feel a little bit better about it, and something to bear in mind going forward in the future. Folks, we're getting that's very, very quickly, almost to 13 minutes we've been speaking already. And you folks are involved as a partner in the What Makes Viruses Tick project. I'll eventually get that to roll off the tongue. How do you see you folks working alongside the What Makes Viruses Tick project over the next 2.5 years of really exciting engagement?
Yeah, I can make a start on that. Yeah, we're really excited to be part of a larger sort of initiative of making people aware of ticks, and obviously the risks that are associated with them, but also making them aware of all the research that's going on at Glasgow and other places with respect to better understanding how to manage these risks, and also making people aware that sort of we're living in a changing environment. Obviously, how people use the environment is changing. We're changing the environment, and thereby the conditions that allow ticks maybe to thrive in places where they haven't been before. And so to make people aware of that, and at the same time to collect information about how people experience ticks, and to report, their encounters with these parasites. I think that's a really exciting opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Folks, anything else that anybody else wants to add at that point?
Yeah, I guess I would say that it's just to emphasize how important this project is. You're working with people and helping raise awareness, and also collecting data from people that are out there walking and what they're experiencing, which is fantastic. And it links really well with a couple of my new projects starting, one of which is looking at ticks inside towns, so urban green spaces or country parks on the outskirts of towns. So there's really nice links there. And that's, I think that's highly relevant to sort of working with people and the sort of bringing awareness of how ticks may even be in towns. You might assume that you're safe, but maybe you're not. Maybe you are. We don't know what we're going to find yet. And another really cool project just starting that's funded by the Scottish government is actually how people themselves and livestock themselves might even modify their own Lyme disease risk just by their very existence. So we're always doing research on how will woodland expansion or climate change or deer management affect Lyme disease risk to us. But how the new project is looking at how do we ourselves modify the risk in the landscape, and we might do that because we ourselves modify the habitat or animal distributions. So if deer are afraid of humans, do they stay clear of towns and villages and car parks, so that we're actually safer if we spend a lot of time together? Same with livestock. Are they putting off deer from coming into their fields a lot? So actually, if we've got a lot of sheep, maybe they actually have less risk of diseases of sheep that are transmitted by ticks. So it may all be nonsense, but we really want to look to see this new project whether we ourselves are somehow shaping our Lyme disease risk.
Wow, that's really exciting. I'm really excited to see where that goes and to learn more. Folks, thank you so much for coming to chat with us today, to tell people about the work you do, why it's really cool, and how it fits into the What Makes Viruses Tick project. It's been really great to have a chat with you. Before we end, for anyone watching at home, there's going to be some links below this video where you can find out more about the work that Lucy, Roman, and Caroline are working on. And if you've got any questions or comments, please leave them below as well. And with that, take care, stay safe, and we'll see you all again.